Michael Curry was born in 1958. He worked as a maintenance supervisor at a local mental health hospital, the Bradley Center, located in Lake Bottom Park. He was married to Ann Curry, age 24. The couple had two beautiful children, Erica, age 4, and Ryan, age 20 months. Ann was 8 months pregnant with their third child, a boy they planned to name Tyler Andrew. She was due to give birth in October. The couple lived at 5433 Rockhurst Drive, in Columbus, Georgia. On August 29 in 1985, Michael Curry left for work at around 7:40 a.m. He arrived 10 minutes later and loaded the kids into the car, and drove to her parents' home, only 4 miles away. Her mother, Bernice Johnson, babysat young Ryan Weiland, and Erica went shopping for a birthday gift, for a party that evening at Burger King. And arrived at the Sears store, but the store was not open yet. It was too early, so she returned back to her mother's home, to wait for the store to open. Michael handed out work assignments to his maintenance crew, then checked out a blue Chevrolet Impala station wagon, telling other employees he needed to go purchase a fan for a poorly ventilated room. He left work at 9:40 a.m. He went to a Sears store first, even though his company had no line of credit there. He then watched some construction work nearby, then dropped by a Montgomery Ward store. He did not buy the fan at either of those stores. At around 9:55 a.m., and left her mother's home for a second time, and headed back to Sears with her daughter. Just a few minutes after noon, and arrived back from Sears, stayed long enough to wrap the birthday gift. Her mother pleaded with her to allow Ryan to stay the night, since she had to babysit him the next day anyway. She offered to even watch Ryan while she took Erica to the birthday party later that evening, but Ann refused, saying Michael was going to watch Ryan while they went to the party. And told her mother her leg was hurting from the previous blood clot, and she needed to hurry home to rest. And the children left her parents' home moments later. At 12:55 p.m., nearly 3 hours later, a sales receipt shows he purchased a 6-inch oscillating fan. The cashier said Michael was drenched in sweat, even though their store was always cold. Michael returned to work at around 1:15 p.m., nearly 3.5 hours later. Michael arrived home around 5:15 p.m. He stated he usually entered the home through the kitchen door, but this time he saw a flyer on the front door, so he entered through the front door. Curry stated he sat down in the living room for a moment, and noticed his wife's purse. He said he then walked into the kitchen and noticed his 4-year-old daughter, Erica's lifeless body surrounded by a pool of blood. He left through the kitchen door and ran to a neighbor's home. Next-door neighbor 19-year-old Paul Edward Grable Jr., had just arrived home from work at 5:30 p.m. As he entered his parents' home, he spotted Michael Curry coming home across the street. He entered and sat down to watch a little television, waiting on his mother to finish dinner. He heard someone bang on his door. He looked through the peephole, and saw Michael Curry. He told his mother as she entered the room. She came over and opened the door. Curry leaned against the storm door, and was out of breath. As they opened the door, he collapsed. Grable picked him up by wrapping his arms around his chest. He told his mother to call an ambulance, thinking he may be having a heart attack. His mother went to the phone. Curry caught his breath and said, "They killed my wife and kids." He ran to where his mother was, and told his mother to hurry and call 911. When Grable came back to where Curry was sitting, Curry was clutching the arm of the chair, rocking violently. He let out a very angry scream. When Grable attempted to calm him, Curry leapt up angrily, and grabbed Grable, and threw him against the open front door, yelling loudly, "They killed my wife and kids." Both men slammed against the door, puncturing the wall behind it. Grable told Curry, "Look, I'm trying to help you," as he pushed Curry back to the chair. Police arrived shortly later. They made entry, and found the pregnant body of Curry's wife Ann, and their 20-month-old son Ryan in the den. Ann had lacerations, a deep puncture wounds on her left temple, and severe bruising on her torso. Her throat also had deep wounds. Ryan and Erica both died of skull fractures, resulting in massive blood loss. Erica was struck with such force, her mouth and jaw were scattered all around the room, and bits of her teeth were all over the floor. A bloody bush axe was found nearby. Coroner Kilgore tried, desperately, to at least try to save the unborn baby. He used a scalpel, and extracted the baby from Ann's lifeless body. However, the baby was blue from oxygen deprivation, and could not be revived. Too much time had passed. Baby Tyler was 19.5 inches long, and weighed nearly 6 pounds. During the investigation, police found that Michael had recently purchased the bush axe. Michael stated he kept it in the family garage. Police also found that the home showed no signs of a break-in, and nothing was missing. Ann's purse was overturned, and the contents were strewed about, but nothing was missing from it. Michael admitted to doing this himself. He did not give a reason for dumping out the contents. There was a second adult purse, which was one of Ann's purses she gave to her daughter to play with. It contained childlike toys, but was not touched or opened. Only someone closely tied to the family could have known the purse did not contain anything of value. Police found it highly suspicious that a checkbook, money, and other valuables were untouched. And Michael claimed to have exited out of the kitchen door, but a trash can blocked the way of the kitchen door, making that impossible. Furthermore, windows and doors of the home were closed, and locked. The only broken window was in the den, but it was proven to be broken from the inside, and a large piece of glass fell from that window down, and landed against the door. Had anyone opened that door, it would have forced the glass to fall, but it was undisturbed, and that door was still locked by a deadbolt. This led police to suspect the scene was staged. The thermostat inside the home was turned to the highest setting possible, 90 degrees. Police believe this was an attempt to disturb valuable evidence. When Michael was brought in for an interview, he gave several versions of what happened. He said he came in and sat down in the living room, but later said he walked straight in, and found Erica's body. He claims to have knelt down next to her body, and cried, but the blood around her body was undisturbed. And lab tests showed no signs of Erica's blood on his clothing. Curry kept insisting he ran out of the kitchen door after finding his daughter's body, but when pressed that a trash can blocked the door, he changed his story, saying he ran out of the front door. When police asked Michael if there was any trouble or anything disturbing that may help solve the crimes, he stated that his wife recently received an obscene phone call. When police asked Michael if there was any trouble in their marriage, he didn't answer. He was completely silent. He did admit to having financial problems though. He said he had no problems with anyone at work or in his personal life that may have caused them to harm his family. Curry had suspicious scratches on both arms. He claimed he got them either moving boxes at work, or when scuffling with police. During the coroner's inquest, Michael admitted to an affair with a co-worker, Pam Burt. Pam also worked at the hospital where Michael worked. He claims the affair began when his wife was in the hospital for complications to her pregnancy. Michael claims a week prior to his family being murdered that Pam's husband, Fred Burt, had threatened him, saying he could harm him without ever touching him. However, Fred Burt had a solid alibi, and later testified under oath that he and his wife were already having issues. That he had walked in on them in bed together, but it didn't really bother him, because their marriage was over long before that. We are currently tracing movements and situations within the family, and with friends in an effort to find a motive and a suspect, Captain Herbert Kirkland, homicide detective over the investigation, said. We had the husband in for questioning late yesterday, but he was released last night. "There were 3 murders, and a feticide," he said. "It wiped out nearly a whole family, and it was certainly the most homicides at one time that I can remember in Columbus." Curry claimed authorities badgered him relentlessly, trying to force him to confess. He said he was interrogated like a criminal. He said, "I was not treated as a victim, I was harassed." Witnesses state seeing Michael in town just several days after the murders with a younger woman. Authorities felt they knew who committed the horrible murders, but did not have enough evidence to bring justice. This crime would go 24 years before police could make an arrest. Michael Curry would continue his life unpunished. He moved to Dalton after the murders, and worked as an electronics technician for Dalton City Schools. He married, divorced and remarried. In 2009, after 24 years, a new district attorney took office, Julia Slater, and reopened the cold case. Finally, prosecutors felt confident enough to charge 51-year-old Michael Curry, and made the arrest. He was charged for the murders of his wife, Anne, and his 2 children, Erica and Ryan, as well as feticide, the murder of his unborn child, Tyler. He was held without bond at the Muskogee County Jail in Columbus. The trial was held at the Muskogee County Superior Court in Columbus. Public defender Bob Watkins led the defense. He argued his client had an alibi, and that the case was based solely on circumstantial evidence. During the trial, it came out that Anne had told her mother that she would need a ride to the hospital when it was time to have the baby because Michael had already told her he would not take her. Testimony also showed that Curry didn't bother to check the bodies for any signs of life. The blood pooled around each body was undisturbed. Prosecutors claimed that Curry spent the 3 hours on the day he was supposedly shopping for fun actually tracking his wife's movements. That he hurried home and waited with overalls on. When she entered, he used the bush axe he purchased specifically to kill his family with. Then he ditched the overalls somewhere on the drive back to work, in a dumpster. They surmised this is why he was sweating so profusely even though the store was cold. Prosecutors said Curry was spending all his nights at the bar drinking with friends, and having an affair. Friends testified that he felt trapped by a growing family he couldn't afford. He longed for a bachelor's lifestyle, and a divorce would be too expensive due to child support for 2 children, and 1 on the way. 2 years after the murders, Curry got engaged with Lisa Nauman. In the trial, Nauman testified that in their relationship, he had threatened to kill her with a staple gun. She said they were having a normal conversation, and all of the sudden he attacked her out of nowhere. "He pulled me over this way, and put a staple gun to the right side of my head and said, 'I'm going to kill you.' I just didn't quite understand it, and then I looked into his eyes and saw the seriousness of it, and I believed he probably was going to kill me. I was just waiting for what minute is he going to take my life." She went on to say that from then on she was afraid of him. The relationship ended shortly after that. Michael Curry did not take the stand in his defense. "It's been a long time coming," Columbus Police Chief Ricky Boren told reporters in a press conference. "In just a couple months it will be 25 years since this horrendous crime took place in our city." Jurors viewed crime scene photos of and Curry nearly decapitated, 4-year-old Erica surrounded by blood, and little Ryan with a gruesome head wound, his ear split from such force, and his tiny hand gripping the carpet. Jurors deliberated for 2 days. They voted a total of 7 times before finally agreeing on a guilty vote. Jury foreman David Lennon said, "Bottom line, when you looked at everything, there's nobody else they could really point to." He continued, "We knew his wife, and Erica, and Ryan didn't have a say, and that's what we are trying to do," he said. Judge John Allen sentenced Michael Curry to 3 consecutive life terms. He could be eligible for parole in 30 years, at age 84. And Curry's mother spoke in the press conference. "Words cannot describe how we feel at this moment," says Bernice Johnson. "It is an unbelievable relief, and sadness. Michael Curry is serving his time in the state of Georgia. Curry appealed his sentence with the Georgia Supreme Court. That appeal was rejected. Paul Michael Mcmanus was born on July 14 in 1972. He married Melissa in 1992. The couple lived in Evansville, Indiana, and had two daughters, 8-year-old Lindsay, and 23-month-old Shelby. Shelby was born with severe birth defects. She was born without eyes and her esophagus was not connected to her stomach. She had to be fed through a feeding tube. When baby Shelby was born, she had to be airlifted to Indianapolis, Indiana for specialized care. In Evansville, Shelby touched many hearts, so huge fundraisers and donations were raised to help pay the medical bills for the family. There was also a trust fund set up for baby Shelby. Melissa and Paul had regular arguments over him spending money from the trust that was obviously meant for Shelby. He even purchased a brand new car, with custom leather seats, and an expensive sound system installed. Fellow employees were skeptical about how he could afford such an expensive car. He told them he purchased the car to drive baby Shelby back and forth to the Indianapolis hospital. Paul worked 3 jobs. He worked at a plastics factory, he was a bar back, stocking the bar with beverages and ice, and also assisting the bartender. He also did janitorial work at a freight company 1 day a week. Around fall of 2000, Melissa left Paul, and had it set up to where he could not get into baby Shelby's trust fund anymore. They officially separated in December of the same year. Mcmanus was living with his mother. The children were living with their mother. In January of 2001, Mcmanus threatened Melissa. He told her he was going to kill everyone. She called the police, and he was arrested, and charged with domestic battery. Over the next several weeks, Mcmanus told friends and relatives he was going to commit suicide, but only after killing his family. He also said that he was scared that Melissa was going to leave Evansville and take his daughters with her. If he killed them and then himself, they could all be together. On February 26 in 2001, Mcmanus was served with divorce papers at his mother's home. Mcmanus called a taxi and left. He drove to his brother's home, and took a gun. He then went to a local gun shop, and purchased ammunition for that gun. He then drove to his wife's home, and shot Melissa once in the leg, and 3 times in the head. He then shot 8-year-old Lindsay 3 times in the head, and 23-month-old Shelby once in the head. He took Melissa's car, and left the home. He called his mother and sister, and confessed to the murders. After the shootings, he drove to the Henderson Bridge between Indiana and Kentucky, climbed the distance of 11 stories up the bridge, all the way to the top, and jumped. However, police were able to jump in and save him. He only suffered minor back injuries, and a lacerated spleen. Prior to the murders, Mcmanus told friends to watch the papers, because he was going to do something big. He was sent to the hospital, then later released into police custody. He made a full confession. He was indicted on 3 counts of first-degree murder with aggravating circumstances due to 2 of the victims being under the age of 12. His trial was held at Vanderburg Circuit Court in May of 2002. He pled not guilty by reason of insanity. He was found guilty on all charges and sentenced to death. He spent 13 years on death row. Mcmanus' defense immediately filed an appeal. However, the Indiana Supreme Court affirmed the judgment. However, later they appealed, and his sentence was overturned by the Federal Appeals Court. During Paul Mcmanus' trial, he was having severe panic attacks, which led to numerous hospital visits. He was highly medicated with psychological medication, including one known to alter memory, as well as one opiate painkiller for his back pain. A Vanderburg County judge ruled that 2 forensic psychiatrists re-evaluated Mcmanus and concluded his IQ was in the low 70s. Furthermore, stating that under Indiana law nobody who is mentally retarded can be executed. However, prosecutors appealed that decision to the state Supreme Court. A divided court disagreed with the Vanderburg County judge and reimposed the death sentence. Mcmanus' defense then filed federal habeas review, claiming constitutional error, and challenged the decision to reject his intellectual disability. The Seventh Court of Appeals ruled that Mcmanus is not entitled to habeas relief, but did rule that the state courts unreasonably applied federal due process standards in judging his competency to stand trial. The U.S. Supreme Court upheld the decision regarding the death sentence, but determined that he did not meet the standard for intellectual disability, alluding that he scored in the lower 80s on tests in his teens, and then again in his 30s, which is within the lower range for normal. Instead of facing a possible trial again, Mcmanus agreed to the prosecutor's offer of life in prison without the possibility of parole, with a clause he could not appeal any further. Michael Curry wanted to be free from his marriage and children, but didn't want to pay child support. So he came up with a twisted evil plan, and tried to fool everyone, but nobody bought his pathetic story. He is a soulless monster, who murdered innocent children, and his pregnant wife. He deserves far worse than our justice system could ever give. Paul Michael Mcmanus was a selfish man who took from his sick baby's trust fund for his own selfish needs. When his wife finally had enough, she left, taking the children with her. When he realized he had truly lost his family, he decided to kill them all, including himself. However, he couldn't even get that right, and ended up just injuring himself. He will spend the rest of his life, locked away in prison. May all of the victims in both cases rest in peace. That concludes this episode. Keep your eye out for the next volume, coming soon. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing. Thanks for watching.